Hello, my lovelies. I'm Jenny O, the author with no last name, and this is part 2 of the differences between writing fanfic and writing original fic. So, in the last video, we talked about point of view and description. So there are things that happen or don't happen in fanfiction that you need to be aware of and do in original fiction. So sometimes these things don't happen because, everybody knows everything already, and sometimes these things don't happen because, anything goes in fan fiction. It's very experimental, it's great for, learning and things like that, just having fun with it. That's what fan fiction is, just having fun with writing. Indulge yourself, okay? And original fiction can be very indulgent, but if you want to publish, either traditionally or indie, people are going to pay for it, so you're going to be held to a slightly higher standard. Okay, so like I said last time, we talked about POV and description. Today, I want to talk about world building and characterization, or what we call attachment. All right, so just like with description, a lot of times in fan fiction, authors don't do world building because the rules of the world have already been set out for them, and they don't have to. Okay? So, like in Star Wars, we know the Jedi use the Force, and they have these lightsabers, and they can do fun things like push things and grab them to them and lift things up, and it's not really all about lifting rocks, but hey, it looks like it's about lifting rocks. But Yoda was training Luke to be a warrior. And, they have really cool airplanes that shoot in blasters, that shoot lasers, and, they have proton torpedoes and EMPs and tractors and beams and everything. And it's very science fiction, but it has space wizards, so it's a little fantasy, so it's science fantasy type of thing, versus Star Trek. Everything has to be explained through science. So all this kind of world building, from George R. R. Martin to Tolkien to, well, Lewis, kind of. Lewis, you need a little more help. To Jakes did a lot of world building in his works. There's some world building in Harry Potter, but it's got plot holes big enough to do a Death Star through. So, depending on your canon will often depend on what type of world building you're doing. Or, depending on your canon, which world rules you're willing to work with. Say, if you're doing, like, Marvel, and you've got, like, half a dozen versions of things, you're going to start picking and choosing what you're going to do and hopefully labeling it. Or if you're working with a television show like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Firefly or Castle or, whatever show you're watching, Supernatural, you might be taking an episode and being like, everything after this is not canon in my story. I'm starting anew, type of thing. So you might be picking and choosing what world building and what rules you want to use when you're writing fan fiction. However, when you're writing original fiction, you have to build your own world. You have to decide on the rules for your own world. So you have to come up with culture and societal norms and expectations and things all on your own. And for me, I don't know about other people, this is the fun part. I have to have really great characters to write with, but I really love building worlds. I really like building cultures. I really like trying to, figure out how things work. That's the analytical part of me. Can't turn it off. Might as well take advantage of it. So, as a fanfiction author that is going into original fiction, you might be able to use some of the rules of whatever fanfiction world you're coming out of, but you're going to have to be building your own rules to give your world novelty. Okay, so for novelty, in my book, I was like, I'm using werewolves, and I'm using science for the werewolves, so they're gonna act more like, they're gonna act more like real wolves in the wild than Hollywood or D&D style werewolves or World of Darkness werewolves. I want them to be more like family wolves, I don't want them to be loup-garou and out of control. And if there is someone who does get out of control, it's very, very worrisome. So they're like, what is going on? Why is it going on? And how do we put a stop to it as fast as possible? So I was trying to give some novelty factor to the whole urban fantasy thing, and I'm like, contemporary world, kind of boring. I want my motorcycles to float on with holograms, and I want, the cars to have like floaty engine blocks underneath them, and I want things to be more science fiction, but without, laser blasting, laser pistols. Basically, you get a choice. You can fly your ship or you can have shields. You can't have both. So, like, I wanted to create this world, and I put a budget limitation on it, $35 to $65 million, which is the budget for both for Serenity and for Riddick. I think we're both about $65 million. So I wanted like a $65 million special budget overall, including special effects. So that's how I worked my world, kind of like, how do I give this novelty and how do I keep it reasonable without it being thick? So you get to be the god of whatever story you're building, and you get to decide how things are going to go in your fantasy world or your science fiction world or your science fantasy world, or if you're working in the contemporary world, you get to like choose where you are in the contemporary world. Or maybe you want to write something that's a little paranormal, so you get to decide whether you want ghosts or cryptids, whatever. It's your world. It is your story. You get to do what you want. But you have to put it in the book when it's relevant. Please don't put something in book 1 that's not relevant until book 6. I just don't, please. Okay? So you have to do the world building, and you get to explain the world building or show the world building. Showing is usually better than outright telling, but sometimes, there's nothing you can do but summarize. And, summary is okay at times. Especially if it would just take too long to show, or it wouldn't be interesting to show. You can go ahead and summarize. Or you can do both. I think I did that in the Vamp Rom-Com. I was like, so there is an ossuary. What is an ossuary? Most people don't know what an ossuary is. So let us go tell them what an ossuary is and show them the ossuary at the same time. Fun. And then we have some flirting. Okay. We can do this. So in your fanfiction, you might not have been doing world building unless, you're working in a world that is very, very vast, or doesn't have the author, the canon person, the IP holder didn't do a lot of world building themselves, so you're trying to fill in the holes to figure out, where it is. I have a science fiction space opera and a science fiction hope punk or solar punk, and then a Magitech series, all because I was trying to fill in the holes of 3 different canons, worlds, and went, I'm doing way too much work for a fandom IP. Maybe I need to like yank this culture stuff out and make my own thing. Need my own characters and my own planet and everything. Let me do this myself. So, and those are all like, most of them need plot. I have characters, I have worlds, but I need plot. That can be tough. But, that is something that is more important in original fic than it usually is in fanfic, because the fanfic has us all done for you most of the time. Alright. The second thing we're going to talk about is characterization or attachment. So this is something I've seen and from fanfic writers when they go to original writing. So when you're writing fanfic, even if you're including original characters, which is not always in fanfiction because there is kind of this stigma against original characters in fanfiction, but sometimes your canon, Arnia, does not include enough people that, you know, you can reasonably do what you want to do with the canon and tell a story, so you have to come up with some original characters. And if you come up with an original character and you've been writing them for a long time in your fan fiction, a lot of times they get that same comforting type of feel to them that the fan fiction characters do, the characters that you've been working with. So you love this original character as much as you love the fan characters. And they take on that same kind of status that you've done so much with them. They have this huge history and everything in your head, this kind of canon in your head, that when you switch to original fiction, you forget that your readers do not have the same attachment to the characters that you do. So I think this is what happened with Ahsoka, the TV show, is that unless you've watched the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels and so on, you might not have the same attachment to the Ahsoka character that Favre and Filoni do. Like, you don't have that attachment to Sabine, and you don't have that attachment to the one guy that they were trying to find. So you're not going to enjoy the book quite, or the show quite so much, because you don't have any stake, you have no investment in these characters succeeding at whatever they want to do. So when you're writing a book, now your protagonists don't have to be good people. They can be the villains, they can be gray areas, they can be anti-heroes. You know, you need to be able to write them in such a way that the readers will become invested in their story the way they were invested in the fan fiction that you've been writing. So you're going to have to show their character rather than tell their character and have the people, you know, assume. Now, the reason why you want to show the character, you want to show them doing things. You don't want to say, oh, they're honest, and then all of a sudden they're lying off their ass all the time. They're not a very honest person. You can't be, you know, or you don't want to say they're competent, that they're really good at this job, and then later show them bungling, which is what happens a lot because of Murphy's Law. Things have to go wrong in your book, and sometimes that's just things go wrong, and or they don't actually know as much as they say they do. So either you have to work it out that the character is either a blustering bravado fool, or they lied to you about being so competent, or you need to show them actually being good at their job, okay? So a lot of times, if you're writing fanfic, you fall into this kind of, you just tell people things because they've watched the show, they're already attached to the characters, and then, you know, you can kind of do whatever you want because sometimes you're really good at, you know, keeping them to the, you know, you start them off where they are in the show, and then you have them change over time. So by the time you get to the end, they're like a completely different character because they've gone through this massive character arc, you know. Or you're just, you don't care about characterization as much, and you're doing whatever you want with them because, you know, it makes you happy. Whereas in original fiction, people kind of expect some sort of consistency in the character. If the character changes, they want to see that story of how they changed and what they went through to that change. And, you know, if you tell them the character is one thing, they want to see that character being that thing in the story. I cannot tell you how many times I've picked up an urban fantasy novel to have the cover tell me that the character, and even the characters tell me, I am X. I am a security person. I am a vampire hunter. I am a nurse. And then to read the story and have them do anything and everything but security work, but hunting vampires. I think by the end of the first book, the vampire hunter one, she was actually working for the vampires, and I'm going, how does this work? And then the nurse doing everything but nursing. Oh my god. And even in television shows, like, take Killjoys. Great concept. Science fiction bounty hunters. I love Boba Fett. You know, I wouldn't have this trilogy of Boba Fett the bounty hunter if I didn't love Boba Fett. I wouldn't have been so interested in The Mandalorian if, you know, I wasn't interested in space bounty hunters. Okay, space westerns. I love that genre. And here we are. We have maybe 1-2 episodes of Bounty of the Week, and then we go off into this massive story that, like, really needed a lot more time to percolate for me to be going, look, you sold me on this as bounty hunters in space. We are not doing bounty hunters in space, and I really don't care about this female bounty hunter's tragic, horrible, angsty backstory, whatever. And now you've, like, put the entire series revolving around it. I wanted her to be a kick-ass bounty hunter in space, because there's so much stuff that you are just barely hinting at that we could be doing as bounty hunters in space, and then starting this big character arc in a couple seasons when I'm super attached to these characters, and I'm like, okay, now we can, you know, do something other than Bounty of the Week, okay? We've built up your poli-science stuff enough that it could be interesting more than Bounty of the Week. You can't expect me to believe that these bounty hunters are going to change the entire 4 systems all by themselves after 2 episodes. Yeah, no, not happening. So I didn't have enough attachment to the characters to care about the big-ass backstory because you hadn't done enough to get me attached to the characters. So you gotta do enough in your book to get us attached to the characters and not just assume we're going to be attached to them because you're attached to them. And I know that is hard. That is, I mean, flexing those description muscles, yeah. Getting character attachment is kind of one of those really struck by lightning things. Once you figure out how to do it, it's pretty good. You know, you can do it. Like, you'll be able to figure it out once you figure it out. But getting there, you know, introducing, you know, these characters and making the introductions, you know, compelling enough that we're interested in what these characters do. I mean, I was interested in the Native American character who changes into a cougar puma and hunts vampires, but I was not interested in Native American character who turns into a puma doing security work for vampires. That was completely the opposite of what I was sold on. You know, like, so when you're, I mean, as a traditional author, you might not have as much control over, you won't have as much control over your marketing, like the blurb and stuff, as you'd like. But if you're doing marketing on your book on TikTok, like, I was sold Iron Widow as two furry animals having a DBZ fight. There's not enough DBZ, 2 furries having a DBZ fight in the book to say that. The book is still good. I don't think that was, you know, the marketing really that she needed, but it was catchy enough that I picked it up, okay? So just be careful, because you want readers to be attached to your characters, and you want your marketing to match your attachment, you know, match the characterization that you're going to be giving, and because you want your readers to be satisfied. If the readers leave unsatisfied, they're not going to pick up another book by you. Like, I tried reading The Poppy War, and I'm not going to pick up another book by R.F. Kuang, you know, that's fiction, probably ever again. If just reading it, I was like, yeah, no, not for me. This is not my type of author. Sorry. And I could not get attached to the character. That was one thing. I could not get attached to her characters. So that is very important to me. I want to be attached to the character. I want to be invested in whatever goals they have, whatever stakes they have, and I want to see them succeed. And if you can do that, which seems, I know, like an elemental process, you will be able to get more readers than, you know, other people. And in order to do that, okay, in order to do that, take whatever canon you're doing, you know, take the canons that you're writing for in your fan fictions and stuff, and really sit back and analyze how they made you feel attached to those characters, and look at your story, your original story, and see how you can apply the lessons from the canons that made you attached to the characters into your own stories. How did that work, you know? Like for Dragonbound, Pia had just stole something from Dracos, and I wanted to know how she was, how she thought she was going to get away with it, how long she was going to be able to run for him, and what would happen when he caught up with her, because it was pretty clear that Dracos, the dragon, is going to catch up with her. But, you know, what will happen to them together to make them want to, you know, become a couple. Like, so you have to, you know, it's a combination of the scenario and the combination of the characters themselves that will get your readers invested into what is going on. So, and sometimes, you know, you're going to have characters that people are not going to get invested in, and they're reading the book for other characters, which is, I guess, what is happening with Fourth Wing. They're not there for the main character. They're there for the back characters, and that is a problem, in my opinion, but hey, she's still selling books. All right, so those are two things that are a lot different than fan fiction. So world building, as in unless you're, you know, been working in a world that has lots of holes, you might not be used to it, but so now you have to build your own world, but you get to be God, and that's so much fun. being God of your universe is fun. And working on creating characters that people will get invested into and attached to and want to see what happens to throughout the book, no matter what weird, wacky hijinks you put them through, okay? And this involves, you know, really loving your characters, making sure you have some character consistency, and, like, showing your characters doing stuff and having friends. This is really important. I'm sorry. Last minute thing here. I cannot emphasize how much do not do the Jim Butcher thing. Do not try to make your main character an island. It does not work. I mean, he's got a bunch of side characters, and every single time you turn around, Harry is trying to protect them by making himself an isolated island. And of course, it never works, and he still has not learned his lesson. I don't know how many books we're in now, but don't do that. It doesn't work. Give your character some friends. Give them some family. Maybe that's a strange family. There's some conflict for you. You know, just make sure that there is something for us to invest in, some sort of, you know, they're good at something. They also have some sort of fear or some flaws. You know, are they crude? Are they violent? That type of thing. That we want to be involved in their story. We want to keep turning the pages just because we love the characters so much, right? All right. Take care of yourselves, my lovelies. Stay safe, bless, and I will see you in the next video, where we're going to talk about original original fiction, fan fiction, original fiction, and traditional publishing. All right. Take care of yourselves. Bless. Stay safe. Next video.